Welcome back to the last session of the fourth Elets Pharma Leadership Summit. We are now heading into a discussion on digital transformations driving futuristic patient centric care. Riding the technology wave, patient care is acquiring different forms being enabled by digital transformations. The session looks to understand and delve deeper into this growing trend. And joining us today for this discussion, we have Dr. Mukund KS, Assistant Vice President and Head IT, Eris Life Sciences, who will be the moderator of this session. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, hi, good evening.
We are pleased to welcome Dr. Sushil Kumar Meher, Head Health IT, AIMS, New Delhi. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much. We will also be joined by Dr. Anil Parekh, President, Medical Affairs and Clinical Research, IPCA Laboratories Limited. We'd like to welcome Mr. Amrit Medhekar, President, Walkhart.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
And we'd like to welcome Mr. Linneman Thomas, Digital Lead, Sanofi. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Mr. Srinath, Associate Vice President, IT, Beatrice.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Over to you, Dr. Mukund, to steer the discussion forward. And I see we have Dr. Parekh joining us. So, welcome, Dr. Parekh. Thank you so much for being here. So, over to Dr. Mukund to steer the discussion forward.
Salutations, dear friends, and wishing you all a mesmerizing and a zestful evening. Now that context has been set by the lovely lady out there, thank you, Garima. Let's start rolling. Well, today, patients are the main drivers of the tectonic shift within the healthcare industry. The phenomenon that we have been referring to is the consumerization of healthcare, a more patient centric care model, and that's pervasive globally. Pre-COVID, we lived in an era of virtual care 1.0 or 1.0, where patient-centric care or patient engagement was probably assumed and presumed and limited to virtual consultations. The global pandemic strikes and the world has moved to a freeze mode. Patients have become more aware, more demanding. Pfizer, Moderna have become everyday's conversation at dinner tables at home. It's time to hit the refresh button and look at Virtual Care 2.0. Well, remote and video consultations save a lot of time for patients, but it is especially beneficial for people who try to struggle during their appointment period. But the more imperative question that we are looking at today is what happens to these patients in between the appointments. That is of crux, which is still unanswered. Let's consider a patient living with certain chronic conditions like a type 1 kind of diabetes. A lot of research or research from Stanford shows that people with type 1 diabetes approximately take around 70 to 100 diabetic related decisions per day. And they keep thinking about their sugar and the insulin levels every 15 minutes, which puts an undue pressure and influx of thoughts on all of them. And irrespective of this pressure that they do, a self pressure that they do have, and the self stress and the depression and anxiety, very few of them are able to manage the insulin levels and the glucose levels. So, the lurking question that comes back is what needs to change in terms of improving the people's health. We need to probably look at virtual care 2.0 to serve better the patients in terms of chronic conditions. Patients who require 24-bar kind of 7 support throughout the year, all year round. And virtual care is probably moving towards, or when we talk about the futuristic patient care, it is also putting a lot of focus on the patient autonomy in terms of how technology could probably be that particular enabler. Modern healthcare, especially today, is going to be the answer towards it. Improving the confidence of the patient and the patient caregivers in supporting them in the day to day conditions. Let's assume the scenario of a continuous glucose monitoring that is going to be used as a wearable device that monitors and tracks the insulin level of the patient every 15 minutes and sends an alert to the patient and to his caregivers. This typically removes the need for a painful prick method that people have been so used to. But with the melange of technologies that we could look at, like in terms of wearables, sensors, Bluetooth, 5G, artificial intelligence, and a mobile based app, that assist the patient in reaching their desired insulin levels becomes of crux again today. The patient engagement is a process in which patients become part of the healthcare ecosystem. They become associated with this complete ecosystem in terms of how do they assist in creating plan and care and decision making process. With this, let's dive into the interaction, not just about digital patient healthcare, but also creating a smarter patient care. So, with that, we'll start rolling out with a wonderful set of panelists out over here. Let me put the spotlight on Srinath to get started. So, Srinath, what would be some of those factors influencing patient experiences or future patient experiences from your perspective, please?
Thank you for that opportunity, Dr. Mokan. Hello, everyone, and to the larger audience. It's an interesting question, and uh, while talking about future experience, I think for a quick minute we should talk about what is the current experience. And like you hinted, Dr. Mukun, the current setup, it still lags in terms of patient centricity. Now I'm trying to draw a parallel with other industries like the financial services, the retail industry, high tech goods. They have moved several levels up by putting the customer at the focus of all these services. I think that is a major paradigm shift, and the thinking that ideally would drive a futuristic patient experience, right? Uh, that being the concept, there are a few areas I believe, a few factors that will drive how futuristic the patient experience goes. One is awareness, right? It's about the ease of access of the information and knowledge around disease conditions and treatments, right? You take the pandemic as an example. I'm sure people wouldn't know how to handle, for example, some respiratory diseases so much, before the pandemic. But the pandemic has given so much information, awareness about handling respiratory problems, some, basic hygiene and how do you manage yourselves, right? So it is a large scale, comprehensive awareness that will drive better patient experience, because information is knowledge and knowledge is power. If the patient is well equipped with all the right information, they and curated information, they should be able to drive for better outcomes of themselves. That's one. The second is access. It's about mass outreach of quality healthcare, right? Especially where digital interventions can aid that. It's similar to how mobile phones bridge the connectivity gap and e-wallets democratize the banking and lending segment, right? uh, Digital enablement of healthcare facilities, especially in rural areas, I think this will be a big factor. It will typically involve a combination of digital platforms, interventions that support teleconsultations, AI-driven diagnostics, e-pharmacies. All this will lead to early detection and better patient outcomes, right? That's a second factor. The third one, I believe, there'll be a big play for prevention, a focus on disease prevention. Currently, there is a well established ecosystem focused on disease treatment and diagnostics. I believe disease prevention will become a big play in future, by way of greater disease awareness, better monitoring, and adherence to healthy lifestyles, especially in lifestyle disease scenarios. And I think uh, another important, in my opinion, by far the most important one is government policy. The universal access to healthcare typically seen as the responsibility of the government, right? So it's all about the kind of direction that is provided by government institutions, the clear policy guidelines, and requisite regulation that can be provided in healthcare space, right? See, innovation is best driven either by market forces, or if there is a tipping point, or maybe a combination of both, right? Given that we still have to attain high levels of patient centricity, what is expected is some sort of government intervention, some sort of enforcement, for example, of the ABDHM guidelines, right? That should create a tipping point, hopefully, in future. Uh, there would be a greater play for harmonizing patient data, digitization of it, and a sharing of data across all the players in the ecosystem, like your hospitals, your pharmacies, pharma companies, insurers. I think those that will also a big factor that will drive how futuristic the patient experience will get? Well, those are some of the factors I believe will have a huge impact in how
Right.
this
Very,
turns
very
out, Dr.
interesting.
Mukund. Yeah,
Very interesting, Trina, because there was a couple of key takeaway points that I could see from what you had shared. Very, very interesting. Is the first thing is where you're talking about like an outside in kind of approach, like what is happening probably in other industries like an FMCG or a banking. How do we place the patient at the center, uh, and then try to create a value-based outcome for the patient? And probably these value-based outcomes is where even the payments choose probably the healthcare professionals could also get associated, like if their patient is really satisfied with the kind of the kind of service that he's got. So it becomes very important, as you rightly said, in terms of establishing the patient centricity. That is one. The other very important thing that I could also see that you have been mentioning about is in terms of the availability, or like the how the technology is able to grow the mass scale that you're talking about. So probably when you said the reach needs to be there, so probably with proliferation of technologies like 5G coming into place, that is probably going to further help in pushing remote, virtual, and established care into other sectors probably that we may not have been able to reach out to, thus assuring that everybody gets across various spectrums a similar consistent kind of patient experience. And again, interesting that you did mention about data, because when you talk about data, again, with dealing with data, it is important that we look at PI and SPI, so the personal identifiable, the sensitive personal identifiable information, especially with the government of India coming more strongly in terms of the data privacy law of India on how the data could be collated, stored, processed. I think, again, a very important point that you've shared. So thanks for that. I think very interesting points that you've been able to bring about that actually further kindle other thoughts on how we should probably be moving forward. So thanks for sharing that, Srinath. I
sure.
will
Thank you.
slowly shift the focus. Thank you. So I will shift the focus now to Linneman. So, Linneman, how do you feel that the patient healthcare professional behavior shift has happened or has got accelerated by COVID? And how is this shaping the future of what we call as patient centric care, please? Your thoughts.
Thanks, Mukund, for that question. And just let me start with how pandemic has really disrupted, a lot of businesses in India and a lot of lives in India. But if I wear a digital lens to it, the organizations which were on a digital transformation journey, were really able to leverage digital to provide services to patients and customers. So a lot of organizations either have moved faster and accelerated the digital transformation, and if they were not part of this, they have quickly jumped onto the bandwagon. So that's what has happened with the pandemic on. So today, what are organizations looking for? They're looking for three things: start fast and go far, relevant, engaging, and profitable experiences, and reach intelligently. With that said, and the patient centric ecosystem of healthcare services, what's in it for patients? There has been a behavior shift, and what I call the three C's: comfort, convenience, and customization. And that's the shift which has happened with the whole pandemic. Comfort. I would like to not visit a doctor physically and get teleconsulting. For a health practitioner, I do not wish to go to my clinic or my office today, and I would want to do my consultation online. A lot of pharma companies today are asking reps to do to limit their physical calls and increase their digital remote calls with HCPs. That's comfort. Second, convenience. How easily or conveniently can I have access to information? I, as a patient, would love to compare formulation of drugs. How easily is that information available to me? I would like to compare two practitioners to see which one should I look forward to connecting to. How conveniently is that information available to me? From an HCP perspective, is there any information which pharma companies can share regarding therapies? How conveniently can I have access to that? policymakers, how can I have access to research data, clinical studies that can really help fast track certain approvals? That's convenience. Lastly, customization, and if I take it a notch higher, personalization. And that's where the future of innovation is going to lie from a patient centric perspective. Today, a lot of emphasis being given to home care, self care. There are a host of devices which have now got into homes, and you were talking of type 1 diabetes, and what are the, how can you record, etc. So heap of devices which have now entered into homes, and the future is all about how do we consolidate or harmonize all of that data to make sure there is a shift from a treatment to a prevention. So the entire journey changing from treatment centric dispensing to prevention, early detection, and then treatment. So that's where most of the innovation in future is going to happen, to identify Dr. Mukund as an individual. What are his preferences, his strengths, his medical history, and likewise bringing the cost of treatment down because of all of these devices and readings that we are able to now get for Dr. Mukund. That's personalization and customization. So organizations which are servicing the three C's: comfort, convenience, and customization, are in for a long race to service patients in a better way and at a much lower cost. I would pause there.
Thank you, Linima. I think it's just wonderful about what you've been able to put forward out over here in terms of how you've been able to coin out the three C's. It's quite exciting to hear about how these three C's could actually have an overlying impact on not just patients, but also the impact on doctors or the HCPs and even on pharma companies. Very interestingly, when you also did mention about when people typically do the detailing, how could this probably move into a virtual detailing kind of concept where pharma companies could now start looking at talking to like the healthcare professionals even remotely because they may not be available at any given point of time. So could we do remote detailing? So very exciting and interesting things that you've been able to put on that note. And further, where you've been able to articulate about in terms of prevention, because that becomes the starting factor where if you're able to focus on, and along with personalization that you were just mentioning, where personalization of medications can go on, especially with things like 3D printers that are now coming into the market. We could look at personalization and hyper personalization of medication that could probably be done at the chemist shop. And this could be a very, very futuristic and a very interesting way on how we could do personalization for patients. So I think it's been really nice to hear about personalization that you've been able to share about and more about prevention on how this whole ecosystem should work together in not just giving an outcome of what has happened, but also how to prevent. So thanks for that, Linaman. And further moving forward, I'm just flooding the light on Amrut over here to take his inputs on what are the core challenges today that you see, please, in creating these digital and more smarter experiences for patients. Any thoughts on how this could otherwise be resolved?
Thanks, Dr. Mukun. So the first challenge is in front of all of us. So I'm going to be an outlier as compared to the earlier two speakers that we heard of. I am facing the challenge to connect to this program itself. So digital connectivity will be one major challenge. Though I am sitting in the capital city of Delhi, and yet I am finding the connectivity to be very poor, and eventually I have to connect with the mobile. And when I say this, I'm saying it with conviction because I've been traveling for last almost a week, and next 15 days also I'm going to be traveling. And I find it that as soon as you cross any major city, 100 miles out of the major city, you typically get the signals going down. You're not able to connect. And therefore, connectivity, the data, that will be an issue, even I think, at least for the next couple of years. Second big challenge, which will be there and which is still there in the minds of not just the doctors, but predominantly with the population, in terms of the provider the data safety, if you have to call it, or patient privacy, if you have to call it. So there will be one big challenge that you'll have to overcome. And third is we are into healthcare space. So never forget that you are not into a consumer business where touch and feel can be, forgiven. So when you are going to a doctor, the touch and feel of the doctor makes all the difference. And coming back to the point spoken by the earlier speaker, even though you go back towards the virtual calls for the doctor, but the EQ can only happen once you're there physically. And I'm seeing that happening in the market when I'm there. So doctors are literally sick and tired of all the webinars those have been thrown on them for last 2 years. I think they're completely sick and tired. They're looking forward for physical meetings. They are excited to see the patients, and we see long queues in the hospitals. I'm not saying that the digital world is not here to stay. I'm optimist, and I will remain optimist. But that's going to be a long, long journey for us. And on the way to this journey, we'll have to possibly solve for many of the problems related to the patient. When I say customization, what kind of customization are we going to talk about? Because a doctor whom I'm consulting on a certain platform and he refers to me a particular specialist, say a nephro or a hepatologist, he or she of the referred doctor may not be on the same platform for me. So do I need to download another app to reach out to him, or is there a possibility for me to transfer my file or transfer my data to the next doctor seamlessly? So I think government is also working on that. We know little fabric of what is happening on the Ayushman Bharat part of it. But eventually, there are so many platforms, and interconnectivity is still not there, and the blockchain possibly is still years away from us. So it's a journey. I think we are excitedly looking forward for what happens to the EV space, the electric vehicle space. So I think the similar thing is going to be exciting journey for healthcare professionals and doctors alike for this digital patient connect. So I think these I think challenges. The third part which was there was financials, and in terms of the safety of the transactions that you make, there were reports of certain mischief which has happened, and I'm sure that you know about this globally also what happened. You can possibly look at what is happening to technology companies in last 60 days globally. What happened to Facebook or or even the Netflix stocks, and what happened to the Teladoc, the biggest of the big, right? So we know what happens to their stocks. So I think the numbers have literally come down post COVID. The BCG report of last quarter also speaks about the same numbers. The numbers have really dipped down in terms of the digital, patient consult. And I really hope that they prep up, because we are a large country and we have limited resources and less number of doctors per 10,000 patient population. So I really hope and pray that we get onto this journey quite quickly and successfully, because we are the beacon of hope for IT infrastructure globally. So I hope that Digital India really makes a difference. I take a pause here. Over to you, Dr. Mukund.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. And those are words of reality. I mean, though we talk about technology, on ground, the reality is completely different. And we completely are with you on that, especially when you did mention about connectivity. Like, when certain simple connectivity to even to stream this particular session, if that is going to be a challenge, when we are talking about streaming during a particular surgery that could be happening, or we are looking at how do we use connectivity at those point of time, it is still a challenge which you have been very able to put that in a very nice way. I do agree with you. And also in terms of how could this be financially sound, is also a very important thing that we need to look at. And is the technology scalable? Is the technology also available at a cost at which it could be deployed? Is the next question that also is very indigenous to thoughts that come the very next moment when we want to do any of these digital initiatives. And very true in terms of, again, what you've been able to say, that a lot of doctors today are burdened by in terms of the virtual meetings, the webinars that have been happening. And again, where we need to establish, where we hear the fine balance between a remote and in-person kind of meetings. And especially what happens is that when the doctor needs to feel the patient, And that is something that probably today still misses out in the digital era. But probably with sensors coming in, with the gyroscope and all that being available in the devices, could that help? Is still a moment that we need to ponder about, wait and see on how the technology could further evolve and support. So thanks for sharing those words
I
of
have a
reality.
one more small input here, which is
Yes,
the
please.
largest specialty in our country today, right? So if you look
Dermatology.
at the therapy also, the therapy, largest therapy still happens to be the anti-infectives,
Okay.
right? And then you have, of course, large specialties. If I talk about numbers, then pediatrics, dentistry, gynecology, right? So these are the large number, pure numbers here, right? Volume wise. And number of patients also is pretty high. Now just look at this. Do you think dentistry will be done on a digital medium? Do you really think that ophthalmology can happen on the digital medium? Do you really think that gynecology can happen, right? Or obstetrics is absolutely out of window. But gynecology also, I have a question mark because there you require a lot of EQ to happen with the patient who is pregnant. And touch and feel, it goes from generation to generation. So mother-in-law will take the bahu to the same doctor who has delivered the husband, right? So that kind of connect and those kind of things, I think, is difficult. But over a period of time, I'm sure that even that will be solved.
Very interesting, especially when you did mention EQ. I think that's something that would always be there with the physical presence, the physical world, which cannot be ever be caught about from a digital presence yet. But then we'll just have to wait and see. And we'll also pray for probably the digital mission of India to be successful and if we can leverage over there. Thank
Yeah.
you. So now moving over and the limelight on Dr. Anil Parekh. So how do you probably see Doctor in terms of the innovation, the technology that could assist in this preventive, personalized, and probably what we call as the participatory care?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Dr. Mukund. I think the discussions were very, very enlightening, and you really are leading the discussion well.
Thank you.
And what I feel is that for 2 years we were without any physical. So people want to were deprived so much of physical that they actually, and so much of web-based meetings that once the opportunity for physical meetings came, people obviously prefer the physical meetings. But there is a place for virtual care as well as the place for actual physical care. I feel it's a matter of time. Definitely it is going to evolve. So when we say how it is going to, this whole uh, digital empowerment to the patient and to the caregivers, when it is transformed, since our country population is huge, we still rely on disease based epidemiological data on the western countries on the treatment, and we lack our own data. So I see a very, very positive thing that we have our own data can be generated in the course of time, not immediately, but in the course of time we will have our own data sets, how our patients are performing on a particular drug in the real world settings. So what I see is there is a huge potential for preventive as well, since we have more telehealth and telemedicine and all those things will come. This, when you combine with the wearable technologies, where you just mentioned about the wearable technologies, where in the real time you measure the patient's data, like continuous glucose monitoring, the blood pressure, the heart rate, and all those things, and see uh, cholesterol levels, and whether you can predict patients who is going into progression of diabetes, progression of nephropathy. So can we actually pick these patients and delay all these things? So, and plus you can empower the patient with empowering the exercise, diet, and nutrition charts. All those can be strictly monitored through these technologies, and then whether we can prevent these patients from progressing. That's the key word. Like we have the whole algorithms of American College of Cardiology, American Heart Association for predicting the cardiovascular risk. And then we have the European Heart Association, which says Indians are 40% at higher risk for heart disease risk. So this they are saying, but we don't have our own data. So can we get this more data and help in more preventive in preventive healthcare, whether we can do that. Other very important point is when we say big data analytics, very important point is these the statistics suggest that 30% hospital admissions are due to these are repeated, same patients are repeatedly coming, and these are contributing to 30% hospital admissions. So can we identify them? What is their problem? Whether we can control their disease in a better manner so that we prevent, heart failure patients repeatedly going into admissions, the diabetes patients getting admitted, so the asthma and COPD getting exacerbated. Can we pick up these patients and manage them better so that we can prevent their hospitalization? So uh, uh, tremendous scope is there to better manage the patient's disease as well, and in preventing medicines. When it comes to big data analytics and artificial intelligence, we have still not scratched the surface here. So we can predict what is the patient's particular oncology. It has a huge service, huge scope, where you can have the genetic makeup of the patient being tailored to the oncology drug. So this is where the huge potential in oncology is coming of precision medicine. Then in antiplatelet therapy also, those patients who are deficient in cytochrome CYP2C19 deficient patients, you can't give clopidogrel to them, so you give other drugs. So huge potential, I think, comes out of this whole digitally empowered patient, digitally empowered healthcare practitioners, and the whole data generated needs to be which we can look into. So that's what I feel. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anil. You have actually shared also path on which probably we should be paving and moving towards, especially when you did talk about data, because especially when it comes to data, it's not just big data, but even small data that contributes to big data that we are probably looking at today. And especially when you also mentioned about the data that is available in India is not yet probably constructed in a way that it is available. Imagine the kind of volume of data that we could have with the patient, with the number of people, the patients who are actually there. It would be very if you are able to pull it across this data, we have a platform of platforms in which the data across various different ecosystems, various different labs, probably different doctors could probably contribute again with taking the patient consent. Also ensuring on the patient, how do you manage the data privacy of the patient? If we could just look at the metadata and then look at this data into creating artificial models in terms of where you can apply algorithms, and as you said, like could we probably predict the possibilities of future heart attacks that could occur based on lifestyle of patients also, because you said that 30% of the people are again repeated patients who are coming back. So if we understand the lifestyle, we see what is it that is contributing to it, and then lead to that preventive where they could go into a preventive mode in terms of not just giving them solution but also helping them to lead a more healthier lifestyle, also becomes very important today in how probably the futuristic healthcare or patient centricity could be pushed towards. So I think very interesting. Thanks so much for sharing about that. And now the focus where we can bank on the rich experience again of Dr. Susil Kumar. And doctor, if you could share what innovation or innovations do you see further accelerating the pace of transformation in the healthcare sector? It would be very enriching for our audience, please. Sorry, Dr. Sushil, I think you are muted. If
Thank you, Dr. Mukund.
Sure, thank you, Dr.
It is a nice opportunity for me to give my talk of my 30 years of experience. So I have seen from the paper to the paperless, and majority of our uh, team or groups from the government of India to those who have made the standards. I am also part of that since 2005, and the first one it has been created, and just last time what it has been created, it is ABDM in 2018. Anyway, right now what I feel, technology is not an issue. So the right technology in right place, right way you have to use, that is the challenge for us. Whether the regulatory is allowed to use these things or not, it is also one of the questions. What we are looking for it. just a few speakers they have spoken about the uh, empowerment of the patient, but I am talking about empowerment of doctors. Nobody talking about doctors. If doctor is not empowered,
Right.
what is required, then he can give a service to you. What you are looking for it? You are looking for P. What is 4P? First is the predictive. Right now, you have not started yet. Why you have not started yet? I'll tell you. Next one is preventive. Again, also you need a lot of data in your data lakes. That is also not possible. Personalized. You want a personalized treatment. For this, you need the translation bioinformatics information, which contains molecular biology, sequencing techniques, medical technologies, and genomics. That is also, it is very expensive to maintain and it's not possible. You can visualize. Already I have told you, technology is not an issue. Issue is that how to use it. Is it possible? What is it cost effective? Second thing is that we have a big data. We have a big data lakes, you can make it. That is also very expensive. How many hospitals they have a big data? In AIMS, I'm talking about, we have 5 petabyte data we have stored here, including images. This kind of data you did not find anywhere else because we are using, you are capturing this data since all the data since 2001. Then you need a huge computing, otherwise it's not possible. Third one is the already my past speaker they have spoken the connectivity. What connectivity you are using it? You are talking about that communications platform as a service. How many you are using it? What infrastructure is available in here? That things we have to be look into it. Come to the this pandemic time and before that, in 2000, 1999, the telemedicine has been introduced in India. When we are pushing telemedicines, nobody is coming up. Then we have started to empower doctors that how to give a good treatment. Then we have started training through telehealth to get the doctors trained and they do it. That was successful a little bit. But when we have made a study 2007 that why the telemedicine is not successful in India, and then I came to know that the perception of the telemedicines it has not been allowed. That's why today's days what you are expecting in the COVID time. In the COVID times, in the overnight, the whole scenario has been changed. First step what we have taken, how to empower the healthcare workers. And we have the infrastructure was in place and we have started giving training. How to use the mask. Many people they never use the mask. That training program we have started. How to use the gloves. Doctors do not know because if you will not use the gloves properly, the infection will be in your gloves. So that empowerment, the very basic things. Many people they have read it, but they have forgotten it to how to use it. So this kind of, and you can't believe it. In these online programs, we are getting around more than 10,000 workers they are connected. This is the technology liberty you have taken it. But just I have already told you that technology is not an issue. Issue is that how you are promoting the technology, whether it is a hype, whether it is a hope, whether it is a reality. This is the things we have to divide on it. What the practical things we're talking, I'm talking about it. In the COVID time, somebody has a pain in the stomach. To whom he have to go? Let's say whether he has to go to a physician, whether he has to go to a gastroenterology, whether he has to go to a something else. And the doctors is not available. We have built up an in-house voice booths to screening the patients. so that he can reach to a right doctors, right time, without knocking the door of different doctors. And that was a one successful story for you. Third thing is that when the COVID has come, my lab people, they have raised their hands. We can't touch the lab sample. The infection is there. We do not know. We have a totally a robotic process system, which is totally a automated pre-analytic and post-analytic of our labs. All the samples handled by, except the bleeding, all the samples handled by the robotic hands. But who can afford it? It is a very expensive affair because it is around 27 to 28 crores. The setup is there, but how many hospitals they can adopt it? AIMS is not calculate the ROI. AIMS is calculate how to deliver a good service, efficient service, quality of service, and high standard of healthcare. So that's why we get the budget, but other people they can't get the budget. But the whole things how it is come up, we have to look into in different angles. One is the public health informatics, the publics where we're supposed to give the proper kind of information so that they can go to a right place. Then it comes to medical informatics, where the patients will come, capture their records properly in the electronic formats. That is not been there. We have multiple records in multiple places by multiple specialty they are looking into it. That is not been integrated. But ABDM is trying to do it. But I'll tell you ABDM where's the problems. I'm part of the ABDM and I have seen all these things, but they are taking the baby steps. The plus point of ABDM I'm talking about one thing, more than 65 crores they have saved because of ABDM. How? Many people's those who are registered in ABDM, whatever treatment they have given it, unauthorized treatment they have given it, the malpractice is going on. They have caught, they have fined, they have penalized. This is the tips of the work right now. It will go up and we'll get a right kind of treatment in right place without cheating. Third thing is that IOMT. You are talking about the many devices is there, wearable devices is there. Right now it has come up the biopatches is also there. 24/7 you can use your glucose, your BP and everything you can do it. It is very practical because technology already placed, mobile connectivity is there, and people have started working in. We are in the testing phase. I think the data which you are generating, we are good quality of data generating, and it is very useful. It can be practicable. Third thing is that we are talking about the remote healthcare services. Okay, here two example I give it. During the COVID time, we have developed some apps. Those who are critical patients, not required to come to the hospital, they can fit their blood report there. Immediately, we have our own bot systems. It will calculate it, and they can say it is not required to come to the hospital, and your medicine will continue same or some minor doses to be changed. It will be recommended. If something is more than is required, that report will be again seen by the concerned treating doctor, and he has to prescribe it. So in that cases, many heart patients we have saved at that time, and this is very useful, which was been developed in-house. Third thing is that during the COVID time, our infrastructure in place, everything it has gone right time. What is the right time I'm talking about? All the admission of the students, all the entrance test is done in time, all the training programs. You see, the first year MBBS students, they have to do the real body dissection, and we have used VR technique and they have done their dissections virtually, and they have learned it. This is the reality, frankly speaking. Of course, connectivity is a issue. Some people they are unable to connect it, but anyway, larger scale they have learned it in that way. Another one is the remote health monitoring systems. In remote health monitoring systems, in AIMS we get 12,000 patients. I can't give the service of 12,000 patients remotely. What we have done it, the patients who are admitted in COVID, they are in the ICU, and the specialized doctor, they are remotely, they are communicated so that they can see it, they can give the advice remotely. And on bedside, the paramedical staffs and nurses were there. So this way we have given the high quality of medical services. I have already told you, technology is there. Which technology we have to take, right time, right place, right way. That is the one things we have to choose, and that is many people they are missing it. Because and in that case, what depends, a lot of investment is doing. I don't want to tell one hospitals. It is a chain of hospital, private hospitals. They spend a lot of in IT. At the end, they do not got ROI. In that cases, their IT system is collapsed and they came down to the lower levels. So that's why you have to choose the right technology in right place, what you want. And one advice I'll tell you, the technology which come recently, don't use immediately. It is not mature. When the technology is mature, you have to come one version of less. It is in every field also. In the mobile also, if you go for a new model, it
Yeah.
may require some patches to be upgraded always. So if you want a uninterrupted services, you go one model less. That is more reliable than the new technology. This is my submissions to you because I have very limited time. Otherwise, I have a lot of to say about the digital imagings, medical imagings, and how it is been remotely they have been consulted. But anyway, I have to give some time to other people also to talk. This is my submissions, what I have got the experience which I've shared with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sushil. It has been, I would say, your experience has been very enriching for us, especially certain things that you did mention about, where you said that don't go for the technology immediately, let the technology mature or let it be like, a level lower. So N minus one, what we call, is so true, not just in technology, but even for car, we see a lot of cars getting recalled. And so we need the technology to mature or where it can be in a state where it could be utilized. That is where I am able to resonate with what you said as right technology, the right place, at the right frequency, probably with a right cost. Because especially one of those examples that I was able to attribute to is when you spoke about the robotic arms. Like we are talking about robotic processes today, and we talk about robotic processes. Is it possible? Is it scalable? Is it something that falls within the numbers? Is what a lot of organizations would look at. And typically, when you mentioned about ROI, there can be no other bigger ROI than the number of lives saved. And I feel that is something that we have been able to learn from your experience that you've been talking about, where, like, from AIMS, you've been able to do this in terms of not looking at ROI, but your metric was in terms of number of lives impacted, which was which is something that we all empathize with, which we need to, and that's what we are and who we ought to be over here. So interesting again in terms of also understanding when you mentioned about is the technology a hype or hope or a reality? So it is just about time when we will have to look at and see about which technologies is something that we could probably use and probably embark on to start our futuristic journey. So thank you so much for sharing the thoughts out over there. And now, probably what I would do is like we will also a couple of other things. Probably I'll raise this question to
Just a
all
just
our
a
panelists.
rejoinder, just a rejoinder here, Mukund, because when this question is said and this statement, I disagree a little bit that whether it is hype,
Yes,
hope,
please.
or reality. The fact is that it is hope and reality. It is not hype. For a simple reason, a country of our scale and size, right? You are trying to see the kind of penetration that you can do through digital media to reach to the last mile. That last mile delivery, whether it has a connectivity issue or whether it has data privacy issue, whether it has fulfillment issue of medications or diagnostics and other things, all that puzzle needs to be solved, and that is solvable at a much cost efficient way as compared to what we have been doing so far. So I think it's a reality. It is here to stay. We can't be blinded with the fact that everything physical will continue as is. Those days are over. The only thing is that how sooner we are able to expand and reach it to that level that where we want it to take it. And third thing is in the remotest of the places where you don't have even the PHCs, operating in the northeastern, belt where you have hilly areas where the patients find it difficult to even drive and reach to a primary care center, forget about tertiary care centers, uh, in a time span of 12 hours. And when you're having a acute syndrome, right? Whether you are able to solve it digitally, I think that's a great, great service that you can do to the human race if you're able to provide health to the last mile. So it's not hype, certainly not. It is it is hope, and I feel that it should become a reality very soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do hope, along with you, that this too becomes a reality, especially when you did say about, or you did talk about, like, yes, these are the problems on ground and how probably technology could support and go over there and become a part of the lives of people is something that we just have to wait and then push it further and push the realms further to take it to closure. And I think the loop will get closed over there. So thank you.
Yep,
Thank you so much.
yep, yep.
Probably, since we are almost at time, probably I'll just put one another question before we open up to the audience. And I will keep this as an open question. Again, we were talking about ABDM or the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. So probably with the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, we are seeing a lot of support coming in, integrated healthcare systems. We are talking about multiple different stakeholders coming in over here. Probably the government over here, the hospitals, the pharma companies, pharmacies. We are also looking at insurers coming in, doctors, caregivers. Probably how could we see in terms of startup or health tech companies, how could they leverage or build unique experience for patients, or what should they do in terms of innovation? I leave this as an open question, and if, like, to our panelists, to our wonderful panelists, would somebody like to take this over here?
I think Dr. Parik can take a lead there. He had been at the forefront of this change in the medical. In fact, Dr. Parik will agree that we met physically once, but virtually three times in the last 60 days.
Basically only once, but
Yeah,
on the
So
web we
probably we should also give the cue to Garima and team that the next event is going should be a in-person event and not a virtual event too for us.
but I echo the sentiments of Amrut. I think it is not, there is no hype here. It is technology for real, because it has been utilized during COVID period, and before that we never saw that much potential of it. But that potential was clearly seen during the COVID era, and that accelerated the whole situation. And now people are dedicatedly looking at servicing the patients, giving in patient information as well as to the doctors. Also we had a lot of international meetings also with international experts as well. So the whole thing is, I think, and it in a very cost efficient manner, because otherwise if I would have had that three international experts from US and from UK and all that, I will have much more cost, but here I'm just physically having them. So cost efficiency is not in any doubt. So what we require is actually a robust system. So who is going to give that robust systems of preserving the electronic health records, feeding them, how the data will be fed into that. So all these challenges are there. So I think that is still a question which who is going to take the onus of that electronic health records. That's very important question, because ultimately everything will be driven from that data only. So that data will become our primary source, as we don't have Indian data, as I said before, that
yeah,
we have lack of data. But now once this data becomes primary, then we have huge potential. As a country, we have huge potential in clinical development. Like Japan is a country which does a lot of preclinical development and drug discovery, but then it
yes,
outlicenses to the US and European countries, and they reap the benefits of, all statins and everything came from Japan. but then ultimately the US and European country companies, they did, multinational companies, they did uh, the clinical development part. India as a country has a huge potential for clinical development. I think that would also impact the patient care as well indirectly. So that is where Indian company, pharma companies should take lead, I feel. But who is going to take the lead is a $1 million question in that.
Yeah. And
Thank
Dr.
you.
Mukund, I'll also add in terms of the ABDHM's role, right? How could it play a greater role in aiding innovation, right? I
Yes.
think their concept, their intent is right. I also like their idea that they don't want to own the platform. They'll rather be a federation. They will federate the exchange of data. I think what they should ideally do is help harmonize the way the data is collected and what is collected. An easy example to compare to is how the banking and financial industry has figured out the KYC process. Right, there has been an agreed template format in which data is supposed to be made available, collected, and handled. Right, those guidelines, if they are clearly mentioned, provided, and regulated, that will be a big starting point and boost innovation. The second one is, I think there are going to be several to what Dr. Sushil was saying. Technology is not a problem. There are definitely several vendors and technology companies out there who can provide a lot of innovative options. Right, what is required is expert advice to identify the key problem areas to solve. Right, that's kind of inputs and direction, maybe goals that an ABDHM can nicely set. They can also maybe support a setup of a healthcare innovation hub. If you see the news in March, RBI set up an innovation hub in Bangalore to drive innovation in the banking and financial sector space. That's a great initiative. It will encourage several players to be part of the futuristic experience built. And I think, of course, the democratized access to data based on consents is another way they can help drive innovation.
Right, right. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Srinath, for that, and also thanks to Dr. Anil and also to Amrit for sharing those views. Probably, I think let's just take a couple of questions from the audience if we do have any. Garima, any questions from the audience, please?
It's there in the chat, I think.
Sure. Okay. So I see a couple of questions. Probably I'll just put in one or two questions out over there, and then probably we could take it further to closure. So one of those questions that I'm seeing over here is, as the healthcare industry is ripe for innovation, what are the disruptions you foresee making deep impact in the future?
can I answer it?
Sure, Dr. Sushil, please.
Just now we have discussed about ABDM. Okay, and when the ABDM has been framed the guidelines at that time, also I was a part of there. I've given a lot of suggestions also. But the what is the plus point of ABDM I'm talking about it? When the President Barack Obama won the presidency in US, he has a vision of this. And when they have implemented, they failed. Why they have failed, that has been learned by the ABDM and they have incorporated. That's why all the healthcare services, those who are giving, they have to have a ID first. The healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, all all ID has to be registered in ABDM. All healthcare service provider, whether it is a uh, labs, whether it is a you have your own dispensary in somewhere else, they have to be also registered. That was missing in US. So right now it is not missing here. Where this data will come? Who is the doctor who has to be registered? Those who are already been registered in MCI, that ID is being used here. Nurses, they have a one association, they have registered. That registration number is used. In physiotherapist also it is like that. Rest of the things, those who are service provider, they are registered and that registration number will be used. Means all the players in one place. What is the things here it is that. Before that, only ABDM is not only the things, the metadata you are talking about it. We have government has already been circulated. It is in the public domain. There is MDDS, metadata and data systems. That has to be incorporated in each application. Otherwise, you can't be interoperable. Second thing is that EMS standard, government EMS standard in 2017, it has been there. So that has to be incorporated. But main thing, what it is that privacy, security and privacy of medical records. It's a big challenge. Just one example I'm giving you. If you ask to a hacker to get a hack of a bank account of a particular person, in US it is around, you can see in the net, it is around 15 to $25. If you talk about some person's health account, they charge around 40 to $45. Why? There is reason is there. But the problem is that where it is we are lacking and ABDM is also lacking. This is one of the major demerits. We do not have any regulatory for this. That has to be. For this, government has tried for DISA. DISA, one of the documents, it has circulated to all the public domain also for suggestions. The many suggestion has come. It has not been incorporated, and it is not been approved from the parliament. Another bill is already pending. It is Personal Data Protection Bill. It is related to DISA, and it has not been again passed from the parliament. If it will pass, then there is a top-up guideline. It will come how to prevent the personal patient records, medical records to be prevented. You have to understand who is the owner of the patient record. Who is doctor? No, it is itself patient. If without consent of the patient, you can't share this record any form. So, if you want to share the whole records, in that cases, let's take somebody saying that I am not sharing the name, I am not sharing the registration number, I am not sharing the phone number, you are not sharing the address, but still you can share it because the regularity is not being uh, approved from the ministry. Only the approved is that owner of the any patient record is itself patient, and hospital is the custodian of this record, and by default, patient is agreed to share his record to his treating doctor. This is the stage we are here. That's why I'm saying why is the hope? This is preventing. Why is the hype? This is preventing. Why is the reality? Because these sort of things it will not merge, then it is not possible. So a lot of things gaps are there. In 2020, when the uh, COVID has come, at that time telemedicine's guideline has been approved from the parliament immediately. That's why it is in used, but there is lot of bottlenecks, lot of problems. It is there where the what is the ethical issues, what is the legal issues. It has not been addressed properly. Again, it is required lot of changes, lot of amendments in this guideline. So this is my what I have learned it, experienced it. I'm sharing with you. Over to Mukund.
Sure. Thank you so much, especially when you did talk about the data privacy law of India, which is still in the parliament right now and not yet approved. Because though they say that they have modeled it on GDPR, but it gets more stronger than GDPR, the data privacy law of India. Because when we talk about the law for India, it is also adding another dimension of in terms of the numbers. Could is there a commercial angle also being associated towards it, which is currently not there as part of GDPR? And then when we talk about how you look at data, the data privacy, and who owns the data, who's the custodian of the data becomes very, very important, because I'm able to relate to another question that has also been asked in the panel, where people have asked in terms of how do you need to organize and streamline information. They say it is a constant challenge. And how do you see that happening in healthcare organizations? And how can it be an accelerating growth? So your answers and responses have also answered this question too, in a way, because it has been able to fuel the thought over there in terms of how the data could be segregated, what are the metadata that need to be looked at, how do you categorize the data, how do you disseminate the data, and then further push it with the right consent in terms of what could be used. And tomorrow, if the patient comes back and says that no, I would like the data to be removed, how do you showcase that in terms of the data being removed out? So the article that talks about it should be showcased back to the patient, as he is a person who holds the ownership of that particular record or the data. Right. Thank you. Thank you. It's been wonderful, wonderful. I mean, I feel really elated to be part of such an August gathering, to interact with such wonderful panelists. And it has also been a great learning opportunity for me too. I appreciate Elets Media to give me the opportunity to also moderate this session and to be a part of this wonderful discussion this evening. Thank you, Garima, for
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. And I would like to especially say that, what an amalgamation of enriching thoughts, this Pharma Leadership Summit and this session has witnessed, that has laid, the sketch of the pharma sector of the future. And we would like to extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to our esteemed speakers who could join us amidst their busy schedules and share their vision and insights about the various facets of the pharma sector. And Dr. Mugan, duly noting the hint that you threw at us, we would like to apprise our August gathering and to our delegates about two of our upcoming in-person events scheduled for the month of June. We will be organizing the 10th Healthcare Innovation Summit on the 22nd and the 23rd of June at Heroes Hotel, New Delhi. We will also be having a parallel event, which is the third Radiology and Imaging Summit, also on the 22nd and the 23rd of June at Eros Hotel, New Delhi. And as a small token of appreciation from the organizers, please accept these virtual certificates from our end. Dr. Mukund KS, thank you for wonderfully orchestrating this discussion and sharing your insights. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Sushil Kumar Meher, thank you so much, sir. It was really a learning experience listening to you. Thank you so much, sir, for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Anil Parekh, thank you so much, sir. It's always a pleasure to have you amidst us. Thank you so much again for joining us. Mr. Amrut Medekar, thank you so much, sir. It was lovely listening to you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about the discussion, the designation there. We'll update that, sir. Mr. Linderman Thomas, thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure to have you amongst us. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. And Mr. Srinath, thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure to have you with us at the Pharma Leadership Summit. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you to all the esteemed speakers here. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank you
nice
for a
evening.
wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers for that.